Burkina Faso had always been a land of resilience. But resilience was not enough to feed hungry children or build crumbling hospitals. For years, international agencies had promised salvation in the form of aid, food, medicines, agricultural equipment, and development funds. Officially, hundreds of millions of dollars were allocated. Unofficially, little reached the ground. President Ibrahim Traoré, the young soldier who had risen to power with the support of his people, was not naive. He had walked the dusty roads, spoken to mothers who boiled leaves to feed their children, and visited hospitals where doctors stitched wounds without anesthesia. The question burned inside him: if the world sends so much aid, why do we see nothing? The secret surveillance. In late 2023, Traoré authorized the creation of a covert task force, codenamed Operation Dignity. Its mission: track every dollar of foreign aid. Using loyal intelligence officers, they installed hidden cameras, tapped into encrypted communications, and monitored suspicious bank flows. What they found was staggering. 15 senior UN officials, stationed in Ouagadougou, had diverted over $500 million. The funds meant for water wells, grain reserves, and schools had been funneled into offshore accounts: villas in the French Riviera, apartments in Dubai, private jets. It was all there in black and white. But even more shocking was the pattern. This wasn't just Burkina Faso. Through leaked documents, Traoré's team traced connections to Kenya, Congo, and even Haiti. The theft was global, systematic, and protected by layers of bureaucracy. The confrontation. 4 months, Traoré stayed silent. He built his case carefully, knowing that one wrong move could invite international backlash. Then, on a sweltering afternoon in May, he called the 15 officials to the presidential palace. They walked in, confident, expecting another routine diplomatic meeting. Traoré entered with a dossier nearly a foot thick. "Gentlemen," he began, his voice calm but razor-sharp, "Burkina Faso is not your playground. Here are your bank transfers. Here are the properties you purchased. And here are the villages that never received the food you promised." One by one, he dropped photographs onto the table: starving children, empty warehouses, barren clinics. "You have 24 hours to leave this country," he declared, "or face trial before the people whose future you have stolen." The officials blanched, protested, demanded immunity. Traoré's response was simple: immunity is not impunity. The streets erupt. News spread faster than wildfire. By nightfall, thousands filled the streets of Ouagadougou, chanting, "Dignite! Traoré! Burkina Faso will rise." Flags waved, drums beat, and for the first time in years, the people felt that justice was within reach. When the 15 officials were escorted to the airport under military guard, crowds jeered, throwing sand in their path, a symbolic gesture that they would never again set foot on Burkina Faso soil. The world reacts. Internationally, the reaction was explosive. Western media called Traoré reckless, accusing him of risking vital aid channels. But when journalists examined the leaked documents, the truth became undeniable. Major outlets ran headlines: UN officials caught in $500 million aid theft in Burkina Faso. Africa's youngest leader exposes global corruption network. In New York, UN headquarters scrambled to contain the scandal. Statements were released, denials issued, investigations promised. But the evidence Traoré had made public was damning. Threats and pressure. Behind closed doors, pressure mounted. Several powerful nations demanded that Traoré retract his accusations. Economic threats followed: suspension of aid, sanctions, diplomatic isolation. Anonymous letters arrived at the presidential palace, some offering bribes, others warning of assassination. But the young president remained unmoved. "If they cut their aid," he told his cabinet, "we will survive. If they sanction us, we will endure. But if we allow this theft to continue, we will lose our soul." Security around him was tightened. On 2 separate occasions, his motorcade was nearly ambushed. Yet Traoré walked among his people without fear, insisting, "I am protected by the truth, and by the courage of my nation." A continental awakening. The ripple effect was unstoppable. In Mali, Niger, and Chad, citizens demanded their governments audit foreign aid programs. In Kenya, Whistleblowers came forward with similar stories of embezzlement. A new movement began. Journalists called it the African Spring of Accountability. Traoré became a symbol, not just of Burkina Faso, but of an entire continent's defiance. For decades, Africa had been treated as a patient eternally hooked to foreign aid. Now one leader had dared to say, "We are not beggars. We are custodians of our own destiny." The global network exposed. The more documents were released, the clearer the picture became. Billions had been stolen over decades, hidden in tax havens. Some of the very people who sat on global humanitarian boards had quietly enriched themselves while villagers starved. Investigations were launched in Europe and the United States. A few officials resigned quietly. Others faced trials. But many powerful figures still walked free, shielded by influence. Traoré's fight was far from over. He announced the creation of an African anti-corruption alliance, urging leaders to share intelligence and expose the thieves. If we do not protect our wealth, he warned, others will continue to steal it. The legacy begins. Months later, Burkina Faso began to see the change. For the first time, aid money channeled directly through government, programs instead of foreign. Intermediaries built new schools, funded irrigation projects, and stock hospitals. Children carried books instead of empty bowls. Standing before a crowd of tens of thousands, Traoré spoke, "We have shown the world that even a small nation can stand tall. The thieves have been unmasked, and the future has been returned to the people. Let no one ever again tell us we are too weak to demand justice." The people roared, drums thundered, and the sky above Ouagadougou seemed to echo with a single word, freedom. But deep inside, Traoré knew the battle was not finished. He had pulled the first thread of a vast, tangled web. Somewhere, powerful men and women still plotted in the shadows. Yet he also knew something they did not. Africa was no longer silent. And Burkina Faso had lit the fire.